My name is Genevieve Rodriguez Quinones, and I was born in the west side of San Antonio, right here in our wonderful state of Texas. I'm actually proud to say that I continue to live in the Edgewood Independent School District community, the district that's putting this on today. In fact, my academic career began at Henry B. Gonzalez Elementary with Miss Littlefield. I began in that corner classroom, right? And I remember fondly Miss Littlefield bringing us to a carpet somewhat like this, right? To tell us stories that were fascinating, engaging, and interesting. But then I also remember being called to the table, right? And our small groups and reading books that weren't as fun. Books with lines like see Spot run, see Jane run. And if you're a little older like I am, you probably remember those books. But we'll get to that in a bit. I'm an educator. My family, we value education. For the past 22 years, I've served the Edgewood Independent School District in multiple capacities, and I'm blessed to be able to serve in the community where I live. I'm also a lifelong learner, and I say that because I'm currently a doctoral student at the University of Texas at San Antonio. Go Roadrunners. But if you want to talk about breaking barriers, let's talk about the amount of Latinas that are earning doctoral degrees, the amount of women that look like me that are actually earning degrees in higher education. Pew Research says it's fewer than 1%. What do we do about that? But before I go on, I can't do the things I do. I can't lead the students that I serve, and I can't complete the degrees that I'm seeking to complete without the support of my family, including those that came before me. The everyday, ordinary ways that they break barriers, that they have broken barriers, and the ways we will continue to break barriers is empowering. And each one of our students has that same power behind them. But what happens when you go to school and the stories and your representation isn't found in the books? What happens when it's misrepresented, left out completely? It's hard to feel pride in your language, your culture, your community, your history, your ways of knowing and doing if you don't see yourself reflected in the texts that are in our classrooms. So I call on educators that as our communities become more and more diverse, as more Mexican, Mexican American, Chicana, Chicano, Latinx students start filling our classrooms, how do we empower their voices? So, breaking barriers, as I reflected on the topic, it aligned greatly with the work that I do as a doctoral student. So, in my research, I focus on inclusion, representation, and equity in urban public schools. I look at those three areas inclusion, representation, and equity through the books and the curriculum we present each and every day to our students. Specifically, I focus on multicultural children's literature, quality multicultural children's literature, because there's books out there that may include people that look like me, but they're not all that friendly, right? And so, how do we help teachers and help students find themselves in these texts? Literacy researcher Sims Bishop states that books should be windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. What she means by that is that children should be able to find themselves in the books, find their communities and cultures, but also find the communities and cultures of others that aren't like them so that they learn to work together. It's hard to take pride in who you are when you don't find yourself in the text. So, as educators, how do we make that? How do we bring books into our classrooms that celebrate the multiple communities that we're seeing arrive each and every day? Communities that build the thread of this nation. How do we include stories that include representation of us and our families, the traditions, the celebrations, the history, the everyday situations that happen in our neighborhood, the ways that people like us and you break barriers? How do we include that in our classroom? Books that tell the stories that we grew up with, the leyendas that our tias and tios told us as kids to scare us into behaving, right? Stories like La Llorona and El Cucuy, those leyendas belong in our classrooms. Or books like The Great and Mighty Nico by local author Javier Garza. I mean, which kid doesn't imagine and wish for their toys to come to life the way the little luchadores do in this text? If you haven't checked Javier Garza out, I highly encourage you to do so. Or books that talk about crossing borders, about the experiences of living entre dos mundos. Books that tell students and show students that what lies across the border doesn't matter which side you're standing on. What lies across the border shouldn't be feared. Books like Vamos, Let's Cross the Bridge by El Paso native Raul III. Or how about books like this, That's Not Fair, No Es Justo, by local poet, laureate, and author La Doctora Carmen Tafoya. In this text, she tells us about Emma Tenayuca, who was a civil rights activist at a very young age, not much older than some of the students that are here today. She organized, used her voice, and stood up against pecan workers, or stood up for pecan workers that were working in harsh conditions and earning very little money. So I say, I can't get away. As a graduate student, I can't let you get away without telling you a little bit about the research, about why this is important. Why should we bring multicultural children's literature into our classrooms? Why should we go above and beyond as educators to bring these texts into our classrooms? Research says a lot of things. Two things that I want to point out today is research tells us that when students are able to make connections with the texts that they're reading, when they're able to see themselves in the books that they're reading, that they're more likely to engage in the learning. And when they engage in the learning, they're more likely to understand what they're reading because they're bringing all their ways of knowing and doing and being into the classroom. And when they increase their understanding, they increase their comprehension. And increasing their comprehension means they're increasing their academic performance. And that is empowering. There's another reason why, and I think it's equally as important. When students find themselves represented in the text that they're reading, they begin to feel pride in themselves and they begin to have a positive self concept. And if you want students to break barriers, I say that's the starting point. But not everyone is as open to the ideas of multicultural children's literature in our classrooms, right? And so I fall on the words of Cesar Chavez, activist who worked alongside Dolores Huerta, right, the 60s and 70s. Their organization continues today. He states that preservation of one's own culture does not require contempt or disrespect for other cultures. What he's saying is that we can work together and our students can see themselves in the texts that we have. But it's hard work. Teachers have a lot to do. As educators, we know that. Speaking to the educators in the room, we know that. But I take comfort in the words of Chicana feminists who said, Gloria Anzaldúa, who stated, do work that matters, vale la pena. It's worth the effort of doing. So building pride in our students, helping them understand and learn their history, helps them know that they too are destined for greatness and that they too can break barriers. Thank you.